Hey everybody, welcome back to Cartooning in Place. My name is Mark Fiore. I'm KQED's cartoonist who does the daily cartoon called Drawn to the Bay. So the vast majority of my cartoons are political cartoons, which are essentially cartoons that say something or have a point of view. And one of the most important tools for a political cartoonist is to know how to caricature. A caricature is a cartoon that looks like someone, but it's a lot more than that. You can say a lot about that person depending on how you draw their caricature. So today we're going to draw President Trump and California's Governor Gavin Newsom. So let's jump in. Okay, let's draw my Trump. I'm not saying this is how to draw Trump. I'm saying this is how I draw Trump. You can draw Trump all kinds of different ways, obviously, but let's start with his signature swoop of hair. That's usually where I begin. And then this kind of blown back or brushed back side thing. And then I leave that big shelf for his flop of hair just to exaggerate that. A lot of what we're doing in a caricature are exaggerating people's facial or, physical characteristics in a way especially that says something about that person. And I'm not going to get too much into the politics here, but we're going to focus on the visuals of how he looks. And one of the things I love to do is that little side eye. So rather than put his pupil in the middle, I'll put it over here. Like he's kind of looking over at you out the corner of his eye. And I'm also going very fast here. I tend to rough it before doing it, but I'm just showing you the different aspects of how I draw him. So now the biggest, I think one of the biggest, almost as big as his hair, that we need to focus on is his mouth. I'm going to draw a smiling Trump. And the mouth is always forward of the head, of his full face. And then to exaggerate that even more, you make that little front feature, underneath the nose. You push that out. And then let's just do him a smile like that. And then the next step is to do just a hint of the ear there. And then what I'll do is bring this chin, have the chin and kind of his rolls, and he's not a light guy. I do this big chin like that comes down underneath. And then it's not just a smooth chin. He's got some lines down here that kind of stretch in. And you can exaggerate those too as much as you want. And then bring this collar line. This is kind of an essential part too back here, because we want to show a little bit of a collar there. And then my favorite part, strangely enough, one of my favorite parts of Trump, his physical caricature anyway, is this little long flip back there. That is one of the things that says Trump. And then, of course, we get into his body features, which is also part of a caricature. I'm going to mainly focus on the head, but we bring this down like that. So it's kind of he's got a sloped back. Again, since he's a big dude, we bring this up here. He's got a big back and his head tends to be down from where those shoulders are. And then of course, that long tie, that will just kind of trail off there. And then rest of his suit parts. And make this come forward, and if we had more, body space, I would show that to you. But this, then you get into his girth and his hands. We'll talk about hands another time. So that's kind of the basics of my Trump. You've got the hair to focus on. You get that big flop of hair. We could even go bigger on that hair. This, like I said, my favorite part there. And then his mouth, the pooched forward mouth, and then the leering side eye. That's another thing that I like to do. And then from here, there's all kinds of different variations. Like of that, just by changing that mouth, you can do that kind of mouth, and make it more like a talking mouth or a frown mouth. He's going down like that. So there's all kinds of different variations we can do with this basic caricature that I like to do of Trump. Okay, now let's draw Governor Gavin Newsom. I can't just draw Trump all the time, even though I would rather, because he's a much easier caricature. Gavin Newsom is a little trickier. He still has not much in the way of eyes visible. He has this kind of, he's a master, I think, at the determined gaze. No matter what you think of his politics, I'm just talking visually here. So, the other thing that we're blessed with Newsom, is his hair. He's a much harder person to caricature because his look is a little more, neat. You want someone who's got these wild, crazy features to caricature, and his features are a little more put together and slicker, including the amount of hair gel or shellac, I'm not sure what it is that he uses. No offense, Governor. Now, we come down here, and I get into his little ear, and he actually, in addition, one of the similar things he has to Trump, he also has a little bit of hair back here. Not quite as much, but a little bit. And besides, he's got a fairly large forehead that goes up to his hair. And then he's got a pretty pronounced chin down there where we can put his nice smile, his political smile in there, and a dimple. I always include a dimple with Newsom. And then down here, when we get to his suit and his body, it's a lot more crisp and, put together in this tie. Sharper lines. So he's a little more angular down there. He's a little more angular all over. And we can even go bigger on his hair. Let's work on this hair a little bit more, because that's one of the main features that we have to work with. See, because like in here, it's a lot more bland. But that's a little bit more how his face is. Do a little sideburn there. And again, if I was doing this in a cartoon that I was working on, I probably would have roughed this out. But I just want to give you kind of my, I guess you'd call it the caricature formula for Newsom that I've developed, where, he's got this sharper nose. It's all about the hair, almost all. And then you also get to include one of these little things again. And the dimple. Dimple, 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 dimple. And then we get down into this longer chin and more angular body. And there we have Newsom. All right, now go do some of your own caricatures. And if you do, send them along to cartoons@kqed.org. It doesn't have to be a politician, it can be anybody. And remember, share these videos far and wide, especially with your friends who like to cartoon. I'm Mark Fiore saying thanks for joining me here on Cartooning in Place. See you back here soon.